when we look into the story about Haile Selassie, there's a lot more than meets the eye, okay? One of the most important things that we associate Haile Selassie with is the House of David, the throne of Solomon, and also Rastafari. But now, years later, after the Rastafarian movement began, climaxed, and now we have seen it begin to take a decline, we actually understand the mystical realities behind it. Most people just see the dreadlocks and the weed, and they don't really take the time to understand the actual religion. In actuality, it is a Jewish-based faith. Most people don't realize this, okay? Centering around the Davidic figure, Haile Selassie. Now, we have some problems with this Rastology, and that's why we have to address it, okay? Because all we want to do is just be on the proper guidance, okay? We understand that no man can be a God, okay? Once again, this is another branch of our family. So one of the most important things to cover here is that Haile Selassie is a matrilineal descendant of King David through the female line, okay? Now, the importance of this is that this means that he cannot be the Messiah. And what we will find is that the Shewa line that Haile Selassie is associated with actually comes from the house of Quraysh by way of Banu Makhzum, which is one of the most prominent clans of the Quraysh. And so we understand that according to prophecy, in order for one to fill the office of Messiah, he must be a Davidic descendant. Just like one who fulfills the office of high priest must be a descendant of Aaron. Okay? This is very, very important. And there's a couple more prophecies that govern the fulfillment of these offices. But once again, as we dig into this part of our family tree, we also uncover and reconfirm the reality that the so-called Arabs that came out of the Hijaz, the relatives of Muhammad, the Quraysh, and those surrounding tribes, okay, the southern and northern, were the house of Israel. And this proves this once again. We also see that Davidic descent coming directly from the house of the Quraysh. And we find prophecy in the Bible concerning this house. So how do we fix Rastafari? We go back to the roots of Rasta. And the roots of Rasta is the what? The Torah, the commandments, and the prophets. And we go back to the prophecies, okay? And so we can see clearly here, it leads us right back to Arabia. Because indeed, the Ethiopia that is celebrated in Rastafari is Arabia, okay? It's Arabia. Sheba is in South Arabia. Today is also called Ethiopia and also Yemen. But this is the reality. We know that the bloodlines were there, okay? So we also understand that King David had many sons, Aaron had many sons, okay, as it was prophesied in the scripture that they would always have many descendants and that those offices would always be fulfilled, okay? So we understand that there was a lot of fighting for power amongst our tribes, always, okay? And we can see this all the way from Israel to the Arabian Peninsula, into Africa, into America, and every other place where we have been. We have fought each other for power. But there was a sword that was always promised to be in the house of David. So now let's look at the other reality. There were paternal and patriarchal links to the house of David through Solomon, okay, through the Shewa Dynasty, all right? And this is where Menelik the first and second come in, okay? So we understand that Yekono Amlak was a noble from Shewa who overthrew the last ruler of Ethiopia's Zagwe dynasty in 1270 and seized power. The dynasty later claimed that Yakuno Amlak was a direct male line descendant of the royal house of the kingdom of Aksum, The Aksumite kings had ruled much of Ethiopia from the 1st to the 10th centuries AD, when they had been replaced by the Zagwe dynasty. Through the Aksumite royal house, it was also claimed that Yekono Amlak was a descendant of the biblical king Solomon. The canonical form of the claim was set out in the legends recorded in the Kibra Nagast, a 14th century text. According to this, the queen of Sheba, who supposedly came from Aksum, visited Jerusalem, where she conceived a son with King Solomon. On her return to her homeland in Ethiopia, she gave birth to a child, Menelik I. He and his descendants, which included the Aksumite royal house, ruled Ethiopia until overthrown by the Zagwe usurpers. Yekono Amlak, as a supposed direct descendant of Menelik I, was therefore claimed to have restored the Solomonic line. So Menelik II and later his daughter, Zeditu I, would be the last Ethiopian monarchs who could claim uninterrupted, direct male descent from Solomon of Israel and the Queen of Sheba. Both Lij Iyasu and Haile Selassie I were part of the what? Female line. Okay? Lij Iyasu through his mother, Shewarega Menelik, and Haile Selassie I through his paternal grandmother, Tinagnawork, Saleh Selassie. The male line through the descendants of Menelik's cousin, Dejazmaktaya Gulilat, still existed but had been pushed aside largely because of Menelik's personal distaste for this branch of his family. The Solomonic dynasty continued to rule Ethiopia with few interruptions until 1974, when the last Emperor Haile Selassie I was deposed. And remember, he was a matrilineal descendant of the house of David. Okay, so we can clarify prophecy and clarify the reality of how we need to now adapt ourselves to the prophecy and how to continue to look forward. And this is also not to badmouth our Rasta brethren, but rather to correct and uplift, as we have been tasked and burdened to do as leaders in our community and as tribal elders and chiefs. And so what we're doing is basically making Rasta sharper, okay, and revitalizing the movement, the Messianic movement, okay? Because we don't find many people who are actually in preparation for the return, okay? And this is what we were supposed to be doing, especially now that we understand for a fact that we are living in the Messianic age, okay? So we know that those who want to follow falsehood will continue to do so, and those who are about the truth will adapt, okay? And a lot of people are not knowledgeable about Arab history, ancient African history, okay? And that's what that delves into. Not this stuff that people promote and show you on television and the propaganda, but the actual knowledge, the actual tribal knowledge, okay? And once again, we can trace this line of Shewa all the way back to the Quraysh. And once again, this proves the Jewish reality of the Quraysh. But this is the reason why the Mahdi is also going to be what? He's going to be a man from the people of Israel. Now we can clearly see why this has been stated. Now it makes sense. And we still have our relatives presently still living in the Davidic dynasty, which is located in the Middle East and in Africa, okay? So once again, we're all over the diaspora as well, as we were prophesied to be sent to the four corners of the earth. And we also know that Judah and Levi would be sent together, okay, because of the nature of their crimes, okay? And we can find this in the book of the patriarchs. Many prophecies were given about our latter state, okay? And that time now is today. So let's understand, we find this Davidic Shewa dynasty first as part of a Makhzum dynasty, the Makhzumi dynasty, also known as the Sultanate of Shewa or the Shewa Sultanate, okay? And it runs along all of the ancient trade lines that we had from our ancient country in Arabia and Yemen, okay? And we also see that this is actually the bloodline of David coming from this group, okay? And they're directly related to the house of Quraysh, which actually confirms the prophecies we find about Quraysh in the Hadith. The Mahdi will be of the Quraysh. The Mahdi will also be of the house of Israel. Okay? And we find it in the Hadith that Anas bin Malik said that the messenger had said, La Mahdiyu illa Isa ibn Maryam. Okay? And the only Mahdi is Isa ibn Maryam. Now, this has some other prophetic implications that we won't get into right now. Some people say, well, I'll put it like this: the non-Arabs who have taken over the affairs of the house, as it was also prophesied, okay, have said, oh, this is a weak hadith. But Anas bin Malik grew up in the house of the prophet. We are Ahl al-Bayt, and we have been given the fiqh. We have been given the jurisprudence, and we have been given the rights to rule and make decisions on what will be weak and what is acceptable and what is not. And we also hold the keys of power to fix, to renovate, and to reestablish the true doctrine based upon the law. And let me remind you, for those who don't know, the images of people that I'm showing you here, these are actually the descendants of Muhammad, okay? And also the descendants of Ali. This is what people don't understand, okay? And what color are these people? They are black, okay? These are your relatives that you always badmouth because you don't know what you're talking about when you talk about your story and your plight, okay? We were a house of people and we did commit atrocities, okay? And all of these things have been written down. But this is what we deny, and this is why we're ignorant today. So we've confirmed our Judeo-Arab messianic connections, okay? And how these connections are intricately tied into the continent of Africa and the Middle East. And so we understand that the Makhzumis are said to have consisted of Arab immigrants who arrived in Shewa during the 7th century. And so what you will continue to find is that our black ancestors flowed out of Syria, Iraq, Palestine, and Arabia into Africa and established kingdoms the whole time. Okay? Even Oduduwa of Nigeria is said to have came from Makkah. Okay? We would understand why. There is a what? Ancient Hebrew connection there. Because the Israelites were living there. And also in Medina, in the entire surrounding area. Clear down to the Yemen, all the way up to Syria and Iraq. And all over Africa. These are facts that can't be denied. Moors, okay, and Arabs and Africans are all synonymous. And we know for a fact today that the whites can't tell the difference between us, okay? Because we come from the same stock, okay? We're from the same family, and we share ancestors. And so once again, this is confirmatory of everything that we've already shared with you for the past 7 years, but it also reiterates the reality that the Shewa Davidic dynasty that is celebrated across the world and known about in modern history actually comes from the house of Quraysh and the Banu Makhzum, immigrants, okay, who came to Shewa, okay, from Arabia. And this is a very, very powerful messianic connection. And it brings the hadiths to life and exemplifies the reality of Judeo-Arab ancestry.